Good morning and welcome to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. Our focus this morning will begin on police-community relations. Communities rely on police departments to protect and serve, and the police in turn rely on community support and cooperation. But unfortunately, the relationship has not always been harmonious. Leaders of the Milwaukee Police Department say they want to change that. We're being joined by Assistant Chief of Police Raymond Banks of the Milwaukee Police Department to discuss just that. How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing well, and thank you so much for being here. It goes without saying when it comes to police community relations, not only in Milwaukee but across the nation, there have been some extremely difficult situations that have actually played a role and had an effect on trust when it comes between the two. So talk about the importance of you being here today.
Well, one of the things I want to make sure people understand is that with this current administration, is not an indictment of any previous administration, but with this current administration, we want to move forward toward improving police and community relations. We know that they're strained throughout the country, and they're strained locally here. And we got to get the conversation started, and we want to start someplace. So one of the first things that we're going to do is to do this town hall meeting. The town hall meeting is really about trying to drive change, externally and internally, and getting people to understand that we need each other in order to be successful at what we do.
Yes, and you recently held a community forum at the Washington Park Senior Center, and you are going to hold several other community town hall meetings across the city, giving residents an opportunity to come face to face with the department and really have their voice be heard, and together, listening to each other, you can in fact implement change.
Yes, correct. You know, one of the problems that I see when working with trying to improve community and police relations is that sometimes the conversations be one-sided, where one side of the relationship is speaking about the issues or concerns that they have. And I'm hoping with these series of town hall meetings that we get an opportunity to hear both sides and bringing both sides of their concerns together and be able to try and drive the change that we need to do to make a difference.
And you've been on this force a long time now, 27 years to be exact. And you've said that under this administration, you feel like this is the most transparent and the organization, in your opinion, that's most ready to talk.
I think that with the change in technology, the change in policing philosophies, and those things that go hand in hand, is a big part of why this administration's drive is a little bit different than what it was before. Previously, when I started on the department, there was no social media.
Of course,
there was no way of getting the word out in the way that we're getting it out now. So with the change in technology, that has really been huge with helping us get people to come in and understand that we really want to make a change and a difference in the community that we serve.
And part of this change comes about, the city of Milwaukee entered a settlement agreement to end practices amounting to a decade-long stop and frisk program. A 2017 lawsuit was brought by the ACLU on behalf of several African American and Latino citizens, and part of that agreement is providing a roadmap to help the current system change for the better. So fill us in on that.
Well, we're all for trying to make a change in policing philosophy where we won't have those type of problems that the ACLU has brought to our attention. Nothing since I've been on the police department has ever been designed, in my opinion, to directly impact a certain community because of the race of a community. The policing practices is what led to the unintended consequences. I know that sounds politically correct, but that's actually the truth of the matter of what happened. And with this new administration, we want to make sure that we don't put out policing practices that are going to target any group of people, not just the African American community. We want to make sure that these philosophies and these practices that we are instituting out there, that they don't have that unintended consequences, because we're learning from the previous administration the type of things that we don't want to do and the impact that we want to try and avoid.
Yeah, and the ACLU has said that even though these reforms are local, they have implications on a national level. They say this settlement sends a signal to police departments across the country about how to remedy all types of problems that really have appeared to target certain groups or individuals. So I think that the first step is recognizing that and then taking it from there. So I think that it is a breath of fresh air and good news to know that there are special events taking place and special steps being taken to achieve that goal. And we both know it's not going to happen overnight, but really the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one single step, right?
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that it's not going to happen overnight, but the one thing that I want everyone to know is that we don't want anyone targeted in that way, and we don't want people's rights being violated or anything else like that. We want a police department that people can trust and people can feel confident in calling us, and that they're going to get the procedural justice that they deserve.
Yeah, and I think that, and I've said it on this show before, that one of the major issues that affects police-community relations across the country is the fact that we have witnessed a lot of things on camera, video, and things of that nature. Again, technology playing a role that it has not been able to play in the past. But when people witness these type of things and then follow the case and ultimately see no accountability for whatever reason, it really does kind of affect that trust and respect that people have for the force. So the problem with that is that we know that all cops are not the same, just like all people walking the street are not the same. So it becomes really hard for those good cops who are out there putting their lives on the line every single day to protect and serve, to have a few bad apples make the whole tree go bad. So talk about the importance of really getting people to understand accountability and how we'll go about seeing that in the future.
You know, and certainly what you just said is also, we have to make sure that message resonates with our members as well, that the actions and the behaviors that they do can really destroy any type of positive gains that we have. And that's one of the things we continue to reiterate when we're talking about trying to build those bridges. Now, one of the things that I say sometimes to the community is that people can recognize real easy that they don't want to be judged by the actions of a few people that live in the community or even on the block that they're on. They don't want to be judged by the neighborhoods and the communities that they come from. By the same token, we as police officers don't want to be judged on the misconduct of an officer that might be from our department or an officer that might be from someplace else. We want to be recognized as the individuals that are contributing to the good, not the bad. And when something bad happens or there's misconduct, indict that person for doing it. Don't indict the entire organization, because we are an organization that really wants to build upon relationships in the community, and we want our officers to do the right thing, and we want people to be respected. We want to make sure we show the courtesy to the community that they deserve. But by the same token, that respect and courtesy has to come back this way as well. It's a two-way street, and oftentimes we don't get the ability to talk about being able to mentor the relationship from both points of view.
And I think, like I said, the biggest problem is, you know, people can respect officers like yourself who are out here, like I said, putting your lives on the line. But when you do have rogue cops who continue to keep their job, then it makes it really hard. So a great example of being able to get rid of those rogue cops, Chief Morales recently fired one of the officers who was involved in the Sterling Brown case, and this was mainly due to comments and memes that he was posting on social media that were heavy on race.
Yes, and that was not an easy decision. Whenever you decide you're going to take someone's livelihood from them in that way, a lot goes into those decisions, and you weigh the degree of harm in which that person's conduct caused the department as well as the community, the breach of trust with the community, and the inability to be able to even walk into a courtroom and testify when you put yourself out on social media that way and you have such one-sided comments about race It just makes it very difficult to continue on as a police officer.
Yeah, because not only did he make a comment about Sterling Brown, he also went on to make comments about NBA players J.R. Smith and Kevin Durant. So that's one aspect of what took place. I guess the main question that many people watching would want to know, what can or will happen to those other officers who we witnessed on video at that Walgreens?
Well, this is still an ongoing investigation. That's just the first piece of the investigation that's still continuing. The internal investigations that happen can be timely because we want to make sure that they're thorough and that we don't have missteps along the way as we're looking at the discipline and the things that happen. So there's still more discipline that's probably going to come out of this. Don't know what they are yet because the investigation is not complete.
Yes, and I will mention that that officer that was fired will have the opportunity to appeal. So it's one of those situations we'll keep our eye on and see what happens. But Chief Banks, is it accurate that Milwaukee Police Department is working with groups that consist of nonprofits and consultants and academic-based organizations and things of that nature to really come together and figure out their opinion on what can be changed as well?
Yes, that's extremely accurate. It's impossible for any law enforcement agency to be successful if we don't have those type of relationships and partnerships, and we don't have that critical eye that's coming from the outside. You know, we can talk about the type of things that we'd like to see happen, that we'd like to do, but you got to have those other partnerships in order to make this relationship a healthy one.
Yeah, and I think that it was very obvious, sadly, when we lost two officers in the line of duty. I think it became very apparent that the community does have a tremendous amount of respect and love for those officers who put their lives on the line, because we saw it firsthand. They came together with the police department, and we really were able to see that it is possible to build the relationships that people in the community have with officers on duty.
Yeah. You know, losing an officer in the line of duty is really probably the saddest thing that we ever have to deal with.
Yeah.
And the outpouring of support over the two tragic situations that we had was priceless. You know, it brought us to tears. Just seeing the number of people that came out with just very simple things to let us know that they were sorry. From things like sending cards, sending flowers, delivering food to the district station for the officers, stopping in and say, hey, thank you for your service. That goes a long way with building morale with the officers.
Absolutely, and I think that it shows at the end of the day that we need you, you need us. Together, we build a better community. So that is really, knowing is half the battle, knowing that you have people in the community who do understand what it is you do on a daily basis.
Yeah, very true. You know, and I just hope people agree to disagree on some things, because we're not going to always be right, and we're going to admit when we're wrong. But there are going to be times where we just won't agree on everything. But that doesn't mean that it has to affect the relationship, because in every relationship that I'm aware of, there's always going to be some sort of disagreements, and how we handle those disagreements will really drive the direction of the relationships.
Well, there are several ways that citizens can get involved in working with the police department. You have a Citizens Academy, so if you would tell us a little bit more about that. Sure.
The Citizen Academy is designed to give citizens an abbreviated version of the training that officers go through when they come on the police department. It's one night a week for 7 weeks for a total of 3 hours a night, and when you graduate, you'll have 21 hours of training in, and the whole idea is to actually give you an opportunity to see it from an internal viewpoint of why we do what we do. We're not asking for you to defend the police once you go through this, but we are asking for you to advocate the things that you see that are done by police procedures. It gives you an educated view about the things that happen, so when those things happen publicly, you actually can talk from a standpoint of, okay, I had that training. That's correct, that's not correct, but it really gives you that knowledge that you wouldn't have had before going through it.
Yeah, and I read that you're able to actually do a ride-along with police officers as well to really get a feel for being on that side of the track and understanding, you know, they are looking for, you know, what may be going wrong and having to be alert and aware of what's going on around them at all times. That's not an easy job.
No, it's not. The Ridealong is not a requirement for the Citizen Academy, but it's definitely an option for anyone that wants to participate.
Okay, and you also have your citizens' complaints, which have always been available to the public, but I want to give you an opportunity to really explain to the viewers why the citizen complaints are important to the force and why it's important for them to realize that they have that right.
Well, the citizen complaint actually gives citizens an opportunity to be heard when they think that something that occurred between them and a member of the department didn't go right. It also provides documentation for behavior that, although there may not be punishment that comes out of your initial complaint, but it keeps a paper trail. So if there's an officer who's been identified to have a pattern of behavior that's not consistent with the values that we have within our police department, it forces us to have to make that change. So the complaint process has been updated a bit, where in the past, where if you filed a complaint with the supervisor had the discretion to say that this is not a valid complaint. We no longer do that. All complaints will be looked at and investigated, and a determination made as to what direction the complaint goes.
And a citizen can file a complaint at any of the police districts, and they can do it right there on the spot or take one home, bring it back, whatever the case, they have that option.
Yes, and one of the new things that we have, you also can download it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's online, you can download it. You still have to submit it personally, but you can download it or you can mail it in also.
Okay.
We're working toward being able to have you upload it and send it to us as well, but right now we're not at that stage.
Okay, and then finally, you are hoping to recruit more officers to the force at the beginning of the new year, and you are specifically looking to add minorities to the force as well.
Yes, one of the great things about bringing about change is becoming part of that process. And to me, one of the greatest things you can do is actually join the police force and become part of the change. That was one of the primary things for me. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to help people, and I joined. There's going to be a big push sometime at the beginning of next year of hiring more police officers. That doesn't happen very frequently. This is going to be a great opportunity for people that are from the Milwaukee area, from the Milwaukee community, to come and be part of the change.
All right, and they can go to milwaukee.gov to keep up with the process and find out more information on anything that we've talked about today.
Yes,
all right.
For sure.
Thank you so much for coming by.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you. Ray Banks is the Assistant Chief of Police for the Milwaukee Police Department. And for more information on community outreach, again, go to milwaukee.gov. And as we go to break, we're going to take a look at a video from Milwaukee Police Chief Alfonso Morales. He's going to talk about what's important to him as he takes on this role. And when we return, we'll find out more about an organization that works to enhance the community when it comes to education, employment, and more. We'll discuss the Wisconsin God Squad right after this.
I grew up here. I remember walking down this sidewalk to go to school. As a kid, I knew a lot of people in this neighborhood, and I still do today. I remember seeing the same police officers patrolling the neighborhood when I was young. I eventually met them and realized they were human beings just like us. Never did I realize one day I'd be a police officer and have the opportunity to make a positive impression on our community. In the 25 years that I've been a police officer, that desire has never diminished. And to now be the police chief in the city that raised me is a dream come true. My responsibility is to serve you, my neighbors, all throughout the city. In my opinion, the most valuable thing in a community like ours is trust. And if I can do one thing as police chief, it will be to rebuild trust between you, the community, and us, the police officers who serve you, who are also members of the same community. Trust requires honesty, and honesty goes both ways. Many of you have shared honest and passionate feedback about how you like to see the police department improve. I'm grateful for those challenges as much as the encouragements that have come with them. I hear you. From me, you will receive honesty. You'll know what the police department is doing to ensure our officers are prepared to serve you well. I have confidence in the Milwaukee Police Department. They care. They work hard. They make sacrifices every day to make our city safer. I'm proud to be the chief of police in Milwaukee, because I know the quality of people that serve our city as police officers. I will also defend our officers when they are right and will admit when members of our organization are wrong. So if there is ever an incident where one of our members makes a mistake, unnecessarily escalating a situation, I'm going to be honest and transparent about it. In those instances where we have made mistakes and are wrong, I'm sorry. To my fellow officers who do treat people with respect and do not unnecessarily escalate situations, you are heroes every day, and I see it. I'm convinced that our role in this city has never been more important. I believe together we will create a historically significant legacy in Milwaukee. My hope is that healing happens for all of us, that trust will grow. And the only way that can happen is if we learn to move forward together. Every resident of Milwaukee, every man, woman, and child, including the individuals who work as police officers, deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. This city is home to all of us. I'm proud to call Milwaukee home. We are all neighbors, and I am your police chief.